Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. The theme of compromise shows up quite a bit in our reading today. We see it in our Old Testament reading with the children of Israel as they go into the land and they settle in the land, and the fact that they didn't drive out all of the people of the nations out of the land, and also they began to intermarry with the people of the land and began to serve their gods. We see them compromising, and maybe we could even say more than compromising, but completely ignoring Yahweh and turning to these other gods. But we see it starting out with this compromise that they make of keeping the people in the land, beginning to marry with them, and things like that. But we also see it in our New Testament reading in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, where we see the church at Corinth allowing this man to basically have relations with his father's wife. And they were putting up with that. And they even seem to have been boasting in the fact that they were able to accept this brother in this immoral lifestyle that he was living. And the Apostle Paul says something very interesting. He says, a little leaven leavens the whole lump. In other words, if you allow a little bit of sin into the church, if you allow this individual to continue on in his immoral practices, that's going to spread, and it's going to influence and impact the rest of the church. So it's not just for that one individual, it's for the health of the whole church. And of course, we can see how that would be true if a person's openly and unrepentantly committing sin and everyone's okay with it. Obviously, that would open up the door for other people to do the same, because they think, well, they thought that he was okay in doing it, so I'll do it too. And the influence of that individual can have a very disastrous impact on the rest of the church. But we could also think about that in terms of our own spiritual life personally. Whenever we begin to compromise when it comes to spiritual things, it can be like leaven that leavens the whole lump. Now, sometimes we might think, well, a little bit of compromise here, maybe saying a little white lie here, or deceiving over there, or cheating someone in this particular area of my life, or I'm just doing that in my business, but that I just kind of keep that in my business, and it's not going to affect the rest of my life. Whenever we begin to compromise and we begin to let a little bit of sin in, and we tolerate a little bit of sin, it rarely just stays contained. It's going to spread in one way or the other, and it's going to affect our lives in more than just one way. And sin has a way of spreading and leavening, we could say, the whole lump. Leavening our whole lives. It begins to affect our whole lives, and where we begin to compromise in this area, and we are able to brush away our conscience in that particular area, then it's a lot easier for us to then compromise in another area, or to allow those compromises to grow into even greater things that we do that would be destructive to ourselves or to others. And it can just grow and grow, and before we know it, we've become overcome by sin, and sin has destroyed our lives. But oftentimes it doesn't start with us just diving off into sin. It starts with these little compromises that take place, and eventually those compromises lead to a lifestyle and lead to habits of sin that brings this destructive component into our lives. And so today we ought to be warned against compromise and say, you know what? Are we going to stand for the Lord, or are we not? We have to choose this day, as Joshua said, choose this day whom we will serve. And we have to be committed to that and not allow even the smallest little bit of compromise to creep into our lives, but to always remain faithful to the Lord, even in the little details in our life, so that we can, one, protect ourselves from the destructive nature of sin, but two, so that we can live a life more pleasing to the Lord. As the Apostle Paul prayed for the church at Colossae in Colossians chapter 1, he wanted them to be able to please God in all things. And that's what we want to do. Please God in all things, in our businesses, in our workplace, in our families, in our churches, in every little aspect of our lives. We want to be pleasing the Lord. And we can do that if we can keep ourselves from these little compromises that are contrary to God's will and have a way of leavening the whole lump. So here's some things we can reflect on and think about as we do our reading today. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.